people, I'm Propagandist and welcome back to our Retrospective RWBY Let's Watch here on the channel. So, last episode of course we finished Volume 2 with obviously Chapter 12, with Team RWBY having to have their final confrontation against the Grimm in the outskirts of Vale after the train that Roman Torchwick and the White Fang were basically driving towards the city walls, crashed through them. So, yeah, I had all kinds of thoughts actually on Volume 2 overall. I had quite a long sort of post-reaction discussion to that episode, which was great, touching on all kinds of things, particularly obviously like Ironwood and his characterisation, as well as just a reflection on Volume 2 overall, in terms of the things that, I liked very much about that volume. And obviously, as I've mentioned, in not just that video, but also the Chapter 11 reaction, we're now going to take a look at some World of Remnant stuff. So basically I was thinking, which World of Remnant episode should I look at this stage now that I've finished Volume 2? And obviously I'd left a pinned comment in the comment section of Chapter 10, the reaction to that one. And obviously in Chapters 11 and 12, the reactions there, I'd also pretty much asked people to let me know which World of Remnant episodes to react to. Turns out I actually didn't need to do that because well, basically, I was looking at my DVD copy of RWBY Volume 2 after I'd finished my reaction to... Sorry, I'm getting gas from coming up my throat from the tea that I was just sipping on. Basically, I was looking through my DVD copy just after the reaction to Chapter 12 after I'd finished recording that, and I realised the one thing, of course, on that DVD that I hadn't looked at was the Special Features tab. And guess what? The Special Features tab on my RWBY Volume 2 DVD has 4 World of Remnant episodes on it, which are connected to things that have happened in this volume. So that's what we're going to be looking at today, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be looking at 4 episodes of World of Remnant. Now the other ones, because obviously there's not just 4 World of Remnant videos in total, there's loads of them when you top them all up. But the rest of them we'll probably look at once we've done Volume 3 then, in that instance. So yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to this, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I actually need to remind myself specifically which ones it was. So Dust Kingdoms, Grimm and Aura, I think, are the ones that we're going to be looking at in this episode, just based on the ones that are on my Volume 2 DVD. But it also occurred to me, looking at the Special Features tab on my Volume 2 DVD, there's a couple of other things actually in there as well. I think there's like an old Volume 2 trailer, and I think there's also an interview on there, presumably, with some members of Team RWBY or somebody who's connected to RWBY's production. So, before we get into Volume 3, I think it'd probably also be worth to do a reaction episode after this one, where we maybe just have a look at those too. Or even, it depends on time. If the World of Remnant episodes that we're reacting to in this particular episode, if they don't take too long, because I think they might only be short overall, maybe like no more than 3-4 minutes each, something like that. And if there's only 4 of them, then actually that means that it may only take about, 20 minutes? Possibly not even that, to get through these World of Remnant episodes and then give some thoughts on them. So if time permits, you never know, we could even take a look at the other special features on this DVD in this episode. But I'll probably sort of play it by ear, basically, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see how time's doing once we've reacted to the World of Remnant episodes themselves, and if time permits, we'll then look at the other things on this, special features section of this DVD. But if not, then we'll do a sort of follow-up episode before we get into Volume 3 and all that, because I think that would be something very interesting. Now, obviously, I've mentioned before how some of the World of Remnant episodes I have seen before, but not all of them. So some of these might actually be blind reactions, some of them may not be. I can't remember which World of Remnants I have seen before, though, that's the only thing. So, yeah, I can't really give a more concrete sense of what I have and haven't reacted to in this regard, other than what I've just said there. But yeah, like the Volume 2 trailer I think I've never seen before, and whatever interview it is that's featured on this DVD copy, I'm pretty sure I haven't watched that before. So some of this will be blind stuff, to put it that way, which will be kind of awesome. So I'm sort of looking forward to it, and I think I won't really delay any further with this intro. I think we'll just get to World of Remnant then, ladies and gentlemen. Alright, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. So as you can see, yeah, we have Dust Kingdoms, Grimm and Aura. and we can just play them all straight one after the other. So that's what we're going to do. Now, of course, I'll probably be pausing frequently, as usual, throughout this if there are particular interesting points that really come up. But without further ado, 3, 2, 1, go. Oh, and make sure I actually put the volume up. There we go. Here we go. Dust. Ladies and gentlemen, tell me about dust. So I'm curious if this actually fill in any of the blanks that I've asked about.
It is a naturally occurring energy propellant that can be triggered by the aura of humans and faunas. But in reality, it is much, much more. Found in 4 basic forms, dust can be combined, both artificially and naturally, to form new, stronger types, each with unique properties. Since its discovery, man has concocted a multitude of ways in which to harness the powers of these mysterious crystals. From airships to androids, dust has made its way into practically every facet of technology. Some prefer to use dust in its raw form, elegant yet destructive. Those who choose to wield dust in this state must possess a certain level of discipline to ensure that their resulting powers do not break free from their control. Dust ammunition serves as a more practical application in today's modern.
So, hang on. I just want to go back to what Salem said there. So you could try wielding it directly, but she says that requires a certain amount of discipline so that you can actually harness and control that power and it doesn't break free from you. That's, I don't know, there's an interesting concept, that the idea that, you know, you could try and directly harness it through, I don't know, in your own hands or whatever, I guess, through the power of your own mind or whatever, but that there's a danger there that you could actually lose control of it. I wonder if, has RWBY ever explored that concept, that idea of maybe a character who tried to do that, but who has become controlled effectively by their own powers? Do you get what I mean? Somebody who has lost control of the power at their disposal, and as a result, it's turned them into a monster, or well, not literally into a monster, but you know what I mean. Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting concept. I'm trying to think if that's ever been explored upon in RWBY. I don't know if it has. Maybe in like a side story or something somewhere. Maybe even in one of the video games. I don't know. Maybe. Anyway, just an interesting thought. Just an observation. 3, 2, 1. Resume.
With the technological advancements in weapon design, warriors need simply choose the right cartridge for the job and pull the trigger. While this has become the standard method of use, it is not uncommon to find individuals still practicing more archaic forms of dust manipulation, such as weaving it into clothing, or even fusing it directly with their own bodies.
Yeah.
Despite working, fighting,
we know about
and even turning a profit with
the
it,
ability to fuse it in your own body.
has still yet to understand how dust came to be.
Because we saw Hazel, for
And
example,
more importantly,
later in the
their
franchise.
involvement with dust will ultimately change the world of Remnant.
Oh, I thought I said play all. That was weird. Let's just go on to Kingdoms then, in that case, since apparently playing all doesn't actually play all, but weird. In fact, I'll pause here just for a moment, because, yes, there's some interesting things that have been said there. So obviously Salem is acknowledging that there's a lot that we don't know about dust, or at least humanity doesn't know anyway. I mean, she probably does know more about it, but... okay, so I think that dust one might be one of the ones I've seen before. There were elements of that that felt familiar, like I've watched them at some point. But yeah, I mean, there were other elements of that that I feel like I that weren't so familiar, so maybe I don't remember them. I'm not sure. But I mean, yeah, I've asked the questions before about what exactly dust is, and has it ever been formally confirmed in RWBY as to what actually it is, where it came from? Because we know that dust, obviously, you know, spoilers for what we learned in things like Volume 6 and onward. We know that dust wasn't on Remnant prior to the gods leaving the planet, so it only came about when the gods had left. And obviously there's always a bit of internal debate in the fandom in terms of what actually dust is and where it came from. Is it just this naturally occurring substance, or is there more to it? Is it, for example, the sort of atomized remnants of old humanity after the God of Darkness wiped them out? Which some people like that theory, and they sort of headcanon that one, but I've always been a bit sort of unsure about it, because on the one hand, maybe, but also it's just other comments in that debate that I've seen where people are saying, well, surely if it was, would you not expect it to be found concentrated in places where there are also, say, like archaeological ruins of past civilizations, that kind of thing, which never seems to be the case. And on top of that, there's also the fact that apparently some dust can naturally grow, like in Volume 5 you see the floating islands with the gravity dust and things like that, which are a bit of an oddity, because is that something really that's left behind by past humanity, or is that something that apparently is naturally occurring? So it's a bit weird. We don't entirely know, so that theory is a bit up in the air and hasn't really been confirmed one way or the other, and there's a lot that we don't know basically about it. I mean, I'll reiterate, obviously my personal kind of theory with it is that it's not necessarily the remnants of old humanity, but it is something that has been deliberately left behind by the God of Light to try and help get humanity restarted. And as a result, it's not just sort of a weird set of crystals with elemental powers, it's also intrinsically tied to restarting humanity. So basically it has some kind of maybe like life-giving property to it, potentially, though of course it can also be used, as this said, as in weapon form as well, to actually inflict injury. So yeah, that's I always say that just because of the fact that in Volume 6 the conversation between the God of Light and Ozpin just before, well, not Ozpin, but Ozma, just before Ozma reincarnates into his next body, the conversation there always struck me as odd, in that the God of Light is very insistent that despite basically being destroyed, humanity will be reborn, almost as if he knows that that's going to happen, maybe because he's had a hand in it in some way, or is going to leave something behind that will restart the species or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's just my personal theory and all that. But yeah, dust is one of those things that's still a bit of a mystery, and we sometimes wonder if Volume 10 and beyond do ever come about, will we ever get sort of a concrete answer to that question? Who knows? Anyway, right, Kingdoms, 3, 2, 1, resume. Okay, should be an interesting one, this. Yeah, some of these World of Remnants, like the Dust one and this one, by the looks of it, are less than 2 minutes.
Dangerous place, particularly for man.
Hang on, actually, I'm just going to pause on that. Oh, I was going to pause on that shot as well, of the moon, because I'm pretty sure I've even seen one theory, just in a comment on YouTube or Reddit or wherever, one person who theorised that dust actually comes from the moon, and that the reason why dust only appeared on Remnant after the gods left was because the God of Darkness, of course, he did that thing in Volume 6 where he blasted through the moon and caused it to take its current form. And of course there's a shot in that scene where you see Salem basically collapsing to her knees in despair after the gods have left, and you just see lots of basically fireballs raining down from the sky, which are presumably bits of space debris from the moon and all that. So yeah, I even saw one theory that someone had said that dust comes from the moon, and that's why it only appeared on Remnant after the gods had left, because the God of Darkness blasted through it and caused a load of space debris to land on the planet, which is a slightly more slightly more out there theory, but still I kind of like it. It's fun. But there were actually people who even theory. Sorry, I'm sticking with the whole dust discussion for the moment because I think it's very interesting. But there were some watchers of RWBY who, I can't remember where it was I saw that theory about dust coming from the moon, but I do remember there were other similar theories people were posting to that, in that, what if the Brothers of Light and Dark are not the original creators of Remnant, and that actually the world that we call Remnant was originally created by a different god entirely, but then the brothers came along, because we know that obviously the brothers didn't originate on Remnant, they came from the Ever After, we know that from Volume 9. What if they came along and basically overthrew an existing god or something, and they transform that existing god into some sort of different form to give themselves more power or whatever. And it's like, what if the moon is that god? Who knows? Yeah, I'm spitballing a bit here, but you know, it's just what other people have suggested at various times. Because the thing is, you know, the idea of a moon god is not, you know, actually unheard of. A lot of ancient civilizations in real life had moon gods, or they, you know, they looked at the moon and they thought that the moon was an embodiment of something divine, something like that. So who knows? Maybe that's where dust comes from. Dust is the remnants of a god, or something like that. You never know. That rained down to Remnant after the god of darkness blasted through it, or whatever. Yeah, spitballing. Some of these takes are maybe slightly crazy, but they're entertaining. I think they're fun. So, 3, 2, 1, resume.
In the countless years that humanity has roamed the planet, civilizations have grown and fallen, but 4 have withstood the test of time. Atlas, Mistral, Vacuo, Veil. These 4 kingdoms, with the help of natural barriers and human tenacity, have proven that they have the will to survive. Each kingdom has a governing council to represent the people and their needs. Next comes the military. While most kingdoms only call on its citizens to serve when needed, others find it important to be prepared. There are still those who choose to venture outside the walls of the kingdoms. Roaming nomads and small villages are not uncommon, yet neither is their tendency to disappear overnight. Lastly,
yes,
huntsman academies. These institutions' sole purpose is to train the next generation of huntsmen. The next generation of defenders that will live and die to protect the lifestyle that they've become so accustomed to. Yes, the world of Remnant is indeed a dangerous place, but the 4 kingdoms stand as beacons of hope, as safe havens from the darkness that surrounds them. They are the key to mankind's survival, as long as...
Just going to pause for a moment, even though we're right at the end here. So obviously you've got Atlas at the very top, Mistral over in the far east, Veil sort of centrally, and Vacuo over in the west. But what's kind of interesting about this map? Obviously you've got what I assume is Menagerie, where a lot of the faunas are, down in the kind of southeast corner of this map, roughly coterminous with where Australia would be on an actual Mercator map and all that. But over to the top left up there, there's a whole series of land masses that are kind of separated off from the main continent, which is curious. And of course, you know, you've also got islands down towards the sort of bottom left there as well. And I know that obviously, you know, Ruby and Yang grew up on Patch, which I think is, if you look at where the light representing Veil is, and you go over to slightly to the left, just off that coast, you can see a little island there, which I think is Patch, isn't it? If I'm not mistaken, where they grew up. But it makes you wonder, you know, some of like these bigger land masses, like that one that you see up in the kind of northwest corner, like who does that belong to, if anybody? Like, is that part of Atlas? Parts of it, or are parts of that technically classed as Vacuo, maybe, or parts of it classed as even, you know, being part of Veil? You know, who governs and controls that territory and all that, if anybody? Or, you know, are large parts of it just a wilderness that nobody really governs? Because of course, you know, A, the terrain probably is quite inhospitable, and B, grim and all that. But it also makes you wonder, where is Salem's headquarters in all of this? Because, you know, the thing about, obviously, Salem is, whenever we've seen Salem from, you know, Volume 4 onwards, most of the time she's in her sort of weird base, which is located in a strange kind of wasteland. That wasteland that the God of Darkness originally inhabited. But of course we don't know where that is in Remnant, which is interesting. And I think, is the working hypothesis that that landmass up in the sort of northeast, the top left corner of northwest, sorry, the top left of that map, do you reckon that's where Salem is located? Somewhere in there, potentially? Because it just seems to be this odd part of the map that has no real features to it. no sort of discerning kingdoms or anything, and we don't really know anything about it. At least I don't know anything about it anyway, and I don't think I've seen any supplementary material explaining what it is either. So, interesting questions there. 3, 2, 1, resume. Oh. Okay, well, let's go on to Grimm. Tell me about the Grimm. I mean, we know they were created ultimately by the God of Darkness, and Volume 6 confirmed that, but I don't know if this World of Remnant will touch on that, really.
Of Grimm.
Sorry, I just spat all over my keyboard.
Destructive force that covers the majority of Remnant. While often referred to simply as Grimm in the common vernacular, these beings serve as the greatest foe to mankind. For as long as humanity can recall walking the surface of Remnant, so do they remember this wicked force. Many ancient cultures believed the creatures of Grimm to be animals possessed by evil spirits, or perhaps the spirits of tortured animals themselves. However, further study, as well as the discovery of newer, more horrific forms of Grimm, does not support this hypothesis. With new creatures discovered every day, scientists perpetually find themselves with more questions than answers. While very little is known of their origin, some key facts have been observed in the wild. First and foremost, the Grimm exclusively attack humans and their creations. While occasional skirmishes between wildlife and Grimm have occurred, these instances appear to be based on territorial provocations rather than a need for sustenance. In fact, the common belief is that the Grimm are not obligated to feed. They choose to. What is perhaps even more unsettling is the basis of their attraction. The creatures of Grimm are lured towards negative emotion. In the rare instances when villages are capable of defending against a wave of Grimm, their survival is not guaranteed, as widespread panic will only lead to more attacks. Little else is known about the creatures of Grimm.
I mean, we know this, yeah.
Captivity has proven to be an understandably difficult task, as the creatures tend to either die or kill those who imprisoned them in the first place. To further complicate study, the corpse of a Grimm will only remain for a short period of time before completely evaporating. Those who hunt the beasts for sport find this particularly upsetting, but manage to get by with cheap taxidermic recreations and bombastic storytelling.
What does that guy look a lot like, Paul?
The creatures of Grimm appear mindless, more delicate observation has proven contradictory. It has been noted that while younger Grimm tend to be more reckless, older Grimm, who have managed to survive their battles, have the tendency to learn from their experience and will exercise caution in the future. This perverse form of self-preservation allows the creatures to become more effective killers. And in the end, killing is all that matters.
Okay, well, that's the end of that one there. I mean, nothing particularly new that we didn't really know already revealed in that one. We know about their negative attraction, their attraction to negative emotional states and all that. And we know, of course, that, as WoR points out in Volume 2, that some Grimm are not entirely mindless. They're old enough to have learned and develop more sort of capacity for slightly more cognitive reasoning and all that. So we know that. And of course, Volume 6 actually pretty much, I think, tells us where the Grimm come from. They come from the God of Darkness, who creates them as sort of a counter to what the God of Light was creating. So, yeah, nothing particularly different or new in that one, I think. So, yeah, let's head on to the next one then, ladies and gentlemen. Which was Aura, wasn't it? Yeah, Aura. Okay, final one then. It's about only 2 minutes long. Yeah, these are really short, these. So we'll get through quite a few of them. In fact, I'm thinking it probably would be best actually to keep this episode as just
widely regarded as
the World of Remnant reactions.
Warriors. While skilled in a wide
and the other
of
stuff I might do as a different episode.
Combat, these champions are also masters of a much greater power. Aura. Aura is a manifestation of the soul. A life force that runs through every living creature on Remnant, whether they are a meager shopkeep or a renowned knight. However, what sets true warriors apart from all others is their ability to amplify and control their aura. Aura is primarily used as a defensive mechanism, passively coating the wielder in a protective force field. It can protect a combatant from what would normally be a fatal blow. It does not, however, make the user invincible. As they receive more and more damage, their aura reserve will deplete. If this happens, all a fighter will be left with is his resolve. Fortunately, when a fight turns gruesome, a warrior can also rely on their aura in a different manner.
Semblance?
Semblance.
Yeah,
Is
also.
a term used to describe the projection of aura into a more tangible form. For some, this could be the ability to control objects with telekinesis. For others, it could mean superhuman strength. The power associated with a wielder's semblance is completely unique. With enough training and focus, a user's aura can turn them into something much more than just a man.
Okay, so that was you for World of Remnant episodes that are on this DVD copy that I have. Okay, let's take a jump cut here, so I can actually have a proper conversation about some of the things that we've learned, or just some of the things that I have in terms of questions arising from some of those subjects that we've covered here. Yeah, like I said a moment ago, I think we'll just stick with the World of Remnant stuff then, actually, for this episode, because otherwise it occurs to me that if I do the Volume 2 trailer and the interview that's on this DVD copy and the special features as part of this episode as well, the title of this video is going to end up being massively long and all over the place. So, no, for simplicity, we'll stick with the World of Remnant stuff. Okay, let's get some final thoughts in a second, ladies and gentlemen. Right, so, yeah, as I said, I feel like I have seen some of those before, or at least elements of them. Certainly the Dust one, bits of that felt familiar, as if maybe I have seen that one. I'm trying to think like some of the others, though. The Aura one felt vaguely familiar as well, so I may have seen that one before at some point. But admittedly, it may have been years ago, as of when I watched them, hence why my memory is a bit vague and all that, and I'm sort of, not quite entirely certain. But yeah, I mean, we'll talk a bit about the Aura one just here quickly, because obviously that was the most recent one, and I didn't give my thoughts really throughout that. But really, and that kind of establishes the sort of direct connection between Aura itself and Semblance. So Semblances aren't sort of like a completely separate power, to put it that way. They're not like something completely distinct from Aura. They're actually part of it. They're just basically, it's the projection of Aura power out into a different, well, how should I describe it? It's the projection of Aura to achieve a slightly different effect than what Aura usually does. So, by default, Aura, as Salem narrated there, gives you this kind of force field-like quality in which, you can absorb a lot of damage, wounds that normally would be fatal to anyone else. Aura gives you the capacity to actually absorb those blows and heal from them very quickly and not sort of take fatal damage and all that. And the one thing, though, that this didn't actually touch on, that Aura thing, was what we learned in Volume 1. Is it Volume 1, actually? No, not Volume 1. Well, no, actually, no, Volume 1 did show it, come to think of it. But also, I think Volume 5 also ties into this as well, the final fight scene when Weiss takes the spear through and then Jean basically activates his semblance and all that. But obviously the whole thing about like Aura and semblance, I think, is that it really kind of manifests when you're under extreme stress. It manifests for the first time, I should say, I think, when you're under extreme stress or emotion, something like that. Was that what it was? Because the whole thing about Jean is, in Volume 1, obviously he has that conversation with Pyrrha in the Emerald Forest where it becomes painfully obvious that he doesn't know what Aura is. And then, of course, Pyrrha explains it to him, and she does that thing where she says, I unlocked your aura, you now have a lot of energy. And then, of course, later on, you have that stressful situation that Jean is in, where basically he's been beaten around by Cardin. Cardin punches him, and then suddenly it's like his aura completely triggers as a result, after obviously Cardin was basically threatening to mess around with Jean's teammates. So, you know, that emotional situation of stress over what Cardin is about to do to Pyrrha and his teammates is what really kind of triggered Jean's aura to properly sort of kick in after Pyrrha had sort of initially unlocked it earlier in the volume. Then, of course, obviously in Volume 5, Jean obviously witnesses Weiss taking a spear through her guts, and that sort of enables him to actually unlock his semblance as well. So a lot of Jean's triggers seem to be when his friends and people he cares for are clearly in huge danger, they're in huge peril. That's the kind of emotional trigger that really seems to enable him to call upon his aura and his semblance, which is a great example then of what I'm saying in terms of this thing that this aura episode didn't necessarily explain, which is that aura is heavily tied to your emotional state in terms of whether you're able to unlock it, draw upon it or not. So yeah, that's the one thing that I think this video didn't touch on, but I suppose that's probably because, you know, the volumes themselves do a sort of a decent job of actually hinting at that, to put it that way. But yeah, I mean, so in essence, aura and semblance, you have to remember, are very connected, very strongly connected to one another. They're not, like I say, they're not two separate things or abilities. You know, aura leads to semblance. But that obviously makes me think, you know, because obviously every semblance is kind of unique to a person. So, you know, what one person has, someone else might not, with some exceptions. Obviously, you know, if you're a Schnee family member, then your semblance is hereditary. It's summoning and all that. But that obviously tends to be, I think, more rare. That's not really the norm. And that makes me think, you know, when you think about semblances that people have, I think, you know, to what extent do they sort of very much tie in with aspects of that character's personality? So, you know, if you think about a character's personality and their motivations and what drives them, or, you know, their sort of formative experiences in life, then I guess you can probably sort of understand why certain characters have evolved certain semblances, to put it that way. I guess if you're thinking about Yang, for example, with her sort of semblance of the fact that she can absorb a lot of damage, then goes into kind of like berserker mode and just can deal heavy damage in return. You know, her whole personality is someone who's outgoing, she's confident, but also she's someone who really wants answers. She wants to know what the truth is, and she is determined to find it. She's determined not to let anything kind of get in the way. So I guess her semblance kind of makes sense then in that regard, because of course, you know, it really ties in just to that idea of her as someone who is going to kind of, you know, beat her way through any sort of obstacle that's in her way, because she, you know, she doesn't want to be held up by anything. She doesn't want to sort of beat around the bush, in essence. At least that's how I would sort of interpret that. And then, yeah, I'm thinking like other characters as well. I mean, having said that, I'm not sure. I mean, to what extent is it sort of really dictated by character traits, things like that? I'm sure people in the comments probably have their own thoughts. Sorry if my eyes are sort of flicking down, constantly looking at my screen. I can't tell if my seat is like sort of slowly descending underneath me. It feels like it is, but then again, maybe it's not. It might just be me, actually. I remember a couple of years ago, I had a chair, an office chair that I sat on, and the sort of central column on it got busted. And as a result, there were occasions where I'd be sat on it, and then slowly I'd be sort of going down like that over the course of these reaction videos, and people would be pointing it out in the comments and giggling about it, and I'd be like, oh, for fuck's sake, I need to get myself a new office chair. I hope that this one's not having the same problem, because I've had this chair quite a while. Yeah, but that's all the stuff about the aura and semblance side of things. You know, the other big sort of interesting one, obviously, well, two interesting things, obviously the Kingdoms one, just with my questions about, you know, the map of Remnant itself and what is that whole northwest landmass that you see on the map. I'm sort of indicating over here, which actually, come to think of it, you know, that's that's the top left where I'm sat, but actually I should be saying over here, you know, for what you're looking at. So imagine the map of Remnant is overlaid on the screen right now. This is where that landmass that I was talking about is roughly situated. Yeah, what is that landmass? Who owns it? Does anybody control it? Or is that where Salem has her headquarters? I don't know, who knows? That may well be something that, you know, originally volumes 11 or 12 or something were originally going to explore and all that before Rooster Teeth had their shutdown, casting RWBY's future into doubt and all. Yeah, so that's the other big thing that is a big question coming out of the Kingdoms. The Kingdoms World of Remnant episode. The other actual aspect of that, though, come to think of it, is that it'd be interesting to think more about the history of Remnant on the whole, because obviously the 4 kingdoms that are in Remnant now, Atlas, Mistral, Vacuo and Veil, obviously, you know, as Sam said, they're the kingdoms that have endured. They're the ones that, presumably, they have long histories, and they're the ones that managed to survive because, I think she said, a combination of human tenacity, but also the fact that they often had quite effective natural barriers that kind of protect them from the Grimm and all that, which, I mean, yeah, that kind of makes sense, I guess, because on the one hand, if you think about each of the kingdoms and their natural terrain, I guess because Atlas obviously is very icy, I imagine that the Grimm maybe have a bit of trouble with surviving in icebound landscapes and all that. Not that they can't, as we see in obviously Volume 7, for example, they can, but I imagine that the terrain, like it is for humans, is probably quite difficult for them too. And obviously then Vacuo is predominantly desert, which again probably isn't really the easiest to survive in and all that. And Mistral, I think, is very mountainous, is it not? So I guess those mountains just act as good natural barriers that are hard to traverse for the Grimm, etc. Not so sure about Veil though, but yeah, I mean, another reason why Atlas probably has, you know, another thing that gives Atlas natural barriers is the fact that it's actually separated from the other landmasses by water, so the oceans probably act as a bit of a barrier, even though, yes, you can have sea-going or aquatic forms of Grimm, but yeah, sure. But it makes me think about, you know, has there ever been any supplementary material that's told us about any past kingdoms on Remnant? Because I know Mantle, obviously there's Mantle technically underneath Atlas, which I wonder if the because I think there's a World of Remnant that came later about Atlas itself, wasn't there? I wonder if that maybe touches on Mantle as well. But I think Mantle, just based on glimmers I've heard, bits of information, Mantle at one point was a separate kingdom, I think, before being basically absorbed into part of Atlas. So there was Mantle, but what other kingdoms were there in Remnant's history? Okay, I definitely feel like my chair is lowering. I don't know if it's just me. Every time I look at the screen, I feel like I've descended like maybe a few millimetres or something. It's really odd. I hope this chair's not giving out or whatever. Yeah, but basically, are there any other kingdoms mentioned in any of the other supplementary material for RWBY? Whether, you know, one's in the distant past or more recent past, that kind of thing. Probably would be quite interesting to know if that's something that's ever been touched on. Because we know, of course, you know, it's in Volume 6 when you have the big exposition episode where Jin is explaining Salem's backstory. There's the whole scene of Salem, after she's gained her immortality, going around the human kingdoms, convincing them to take up arms alongside her. And it does make you wonder, you know, which kingdoms are those that we're seeing? Are they the ancient... Are they the existing kingdoms that we see at the moment? But that makes me think they can't be, though, can they? Because, well, obviously humanity then gets wiped out, and then humanity is reborn. So would it be the same kingdoms that just magically reappear again? Probably not, right? So they must have been entirely different kingdoms, those that we saw in Volume 6, in that flashback sequence. So, yeah, they're that there. So, putting kingdoms aside, the other obviously big thing is just dust and those kind of theories and headcanons that I've outlined that people talk about online in terms of what dust is and where it comes from. Like I say, still no real confirmation of what dust is or, you know, what it's all about. You know, is it the atomized remnants of old humanity? Or is it something else entirely? Who knows? I mean, I feel like the atomised remnants of old humanity is probably the most logical explanation that the writers of RWBY would go with, because that way you can say that stuff that we've seen throughout the volumes kind of reinforces it. But like I say, there are just a couple of little things that, you know, narratively the writers of RWBY would need to address in terms of how it works and where it came from, like the fact that it can grow naturally, because if it is the atomised remnants of old humanity, you'd think therefore it would be a fairly finite resource, not something that can just sort of propagate and grow itself necessarily. Or, you know, confirm my headcanon that it is actually not necessarily the atomised remnants of old humanity, but it is a thing that the God of Light purposefully decided to leave behind. He created and left it there to ensure that humanity would regrow. So it's not just an energy propellant with elemental powers, it's also some kind of magic that was specifically set up to ensure that humanity was reborn and then had some kind of capability that it could rely on to give it the edge against the Grimm, possibly. Yeah, so yeah, all that said, you know, as usual, if you want to let me know any of your thoughts about any of the things that I've talked about there, feel free to chime back at me, ladies and gentlemen. Right, I mean, those are the main thoughts that I had coming out of those, so plenty of questions, plenty of threads of, you know, thought there. I'm sure, you know, you have your own views on, and I'm sure, you know, you'd be happy to talk about in the comments. I'd love to sort of hear what people's thoughts actually are on that. Yeah, like I say, I think this is the point where we'll wrap this video up. I don't think we'll do any of the other supplementary material on this DVD copy, because come to think of it, you know, I was looking at the time of the footage of the World of Remnant episode, so counting the moments where I paused, that was about 21 minutes in total. So looking at my timer on this camera app as I record myself, we've been going in this sort of post-reaction discussion bit for over 14 minutes. So when I add all of that up, that's going to be, what, well over 30 minutes, and adding on sort of 4 minutes or so in the intro, yeah, we're going to be coming up to 40 minutes or so in this video. So actually, yeah, that's probably enough time for this episode. In which case, yeah, so we'll start winding things down here, and those other supplementary bits and bobs that are on my Volume 2 DVD copy, we'll look at those in the next episode, ladies and gentlemen, before we get on to Volume 3. And then actually probably what I will do then, when I boot up my DVD copy of Volume 3, before we actually get to the episodes themselves, I'll have a quick look on the special features there to see if there's like a Volume 3 trailer or anything like that included on it, which there may well be, because if there is, we'll watch that then at the start of Volume 3 and all. So, yeah, we'll keep our eyes peeled for that then, ladies and gentlemen. So join me next time where we'll have a look at whatever interview or whatever it is that's on my DVD copy. I should have actually checked before I started recording this outro section to actually see what this interview thing that's included on my DVD copy of Volume 2 actually is. But, you know, it'll be something interesting, don't you worry. Okay, yeah, so hopefully you'll see that in due course. And other than that, we will start to wrap up here. So the usual outro spiel. Thank you for joining me then, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you'll join me next time for something interesting, with any luck. Unless this interview thing turns out to be something that's not really RWBY related, but, well, it should be, right? Because why would they include something that's not really RWBY related on a RWBY DVD and all that? But yeah, in the meantime, obviously Propagandist is my second channel. For those who don't know, General Strategist is my main channel, link in the video description, where I do a lot of gaming content and all that. It's quite eclectic over there and admittedly a bit unoriginal. I basically just do gaming let's plays of any game that really interests me. But I'm sure there might be something over there that interests you and all that, so check it out if you want to do so. And other than that, I will sign off now. So thanks again everybody, and goodbye.